Welcome back to Rugby Obsession, the place to be for all things rugby.
That's right.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our deep dives.
Absolutely.
All right, today we're looking at something that has really got people talking. The Springboks World Ranking.
Yeah.
Now, you might think, okay, so they are number one, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But trust me, with the 2027 World Cup expanding to 24 teams,
Yeah.
this ranking, it's going to get a lot more important.
Yeah. It really is going to heat up the competition with that expanded format because it adds a whole new level of strategy.
Absolutely.
You've got to think about it. You've got 6 pools of 4 teams, and then you go into that knockout round of 16. So where you land in those initial pools and then who you face in those knockouts,
Right.
it can make or break your World Cup journey.
For sure. So, okay, so for those of us who haven't memorized the rule book, no judgment here.
Of course not.
How exactly does this ranking affect the World Cup draw?
Well, the end-of-year world rankings in 2025 are going to be used to determine the seeding for the World Cup draw,
Okay.
which is in December of that year. So basically, the Springboks, who are sitting pretty at the top right now with 92.78 points,
Nice.
they are in a prime position to get a, let's say, a more favorable path through the tournament.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So holding on to that number one spot, that's a pretty big deal.
It is.
It sounds like it's not going to be easy, though.
Not at all.
No.
No, the Springboks have some serious challenges ahead of them in 2025.
Like what?
Well, they faced the All Blacks twice, both games away.
Oh, wow.
Which is always a monumental task.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you've got Ireland, who are currently at number 3, and France, both away games as well.
Oh, my goodness.
Those are going to be some key matches in determining if they can maintain that lead.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because the Springboks aren't just focused on winning at all costs.
Yeah.
They've got their eye on the future. You know, they're experimenting with player rotation to give newer players some experience at the test level.
Yeah.
And Rassie Erasmus, the Springboks director of rugby, he's been very vocal about this.
He has, yeah. He actually was recently quoted saying the end-of-year ranking is going to be crucial for that World Cup draw.
Wow.
This new format is a lot more difficult, and where you're seated can make a big difference.
Huge.
So they're really walking a tightrope here, you know?
Totally.
Trying to win now while also developing the team for the future.
For sure. It's all about the long game, isn't it?
It is.
So if you want to learn more about this strategy and what it means for the Springboks' chances, make sure you're subscribed to Rugby Obsession.
Yes, definitely.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Sounds good.
Now, what are your thoughts on this balancing act? Do you think it's the right move?
Well, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
They could play it safe stick with the tried and true.
Yeah.
And really maximize those chances of staying at number 1. Or they could take some calculated risks, you know, potentially drop a few spots, but build a more robust team for the long haul.
Yeah. I admire their commitment to the future of Springbok rugby.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, those matches against New Zealand, Ireland, and France,
Huge.
they're going to be nail biters. And if the Springboks are experimenting with their lineup,
Yeah.
things could get even more unpredictable.
Absolutely. It will be interesting to see how they approach these games.
Totally.
Will they prioritize winning above all else, or will we see some of those newer players get thrown into the deep end against the best in the world?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
All right, so speaking of those upcoming matches, let's take a closer look at the Springboks 2025 test schedule.
Yeah.
It's packed with some real humdingers.
It is, and I think that's where we should pick up in our next segment.
Okay, sounds good.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so let's unpack this Springboks' 2025 test schedule.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We've got Italy and Georgia to kick things off, which should be pretty solid wins, but then things get a bit spicy.
Okay, I like it.
Australia comes to town, always a tough opponent.
Yeah.
Followed by the big one, back-to-back tests against the All Blacks in New Zealand.
Yeah, you mentioned those All Blacks matches earlier, and I think that's where a lot of people are going to be holding their breath.
Absolutely.
2 away games against your biggest rivals.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a pressure cooker if I've ever seen one.
It is. And don't forget, this is all happening with the backdrop of the World Cup looming, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Every result, every point is going to matter.
Big time.
If the Springboks drop those 2 games against the All Blacks, and let's say Ireland or France have a really strong run of wins, that top spot, it could be in jeopardy.
So even if they're rotating players experimenting with new combinations, the pressure is still on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They need to find a way to win, even if it's not always with their A team.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance. And I'm sure Rassie Erasmus and the coaching staff, they are crunching the numbers, figuring out how to maximize their chances in both the short term and the long term.
Yeah, it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
It is.
So it's not just about the All Blacks, right?
No.
After that, they've got Argentina, always a physical battle. Then Wales at home, followed by another tough away trip to face France.
And then, to cap it all off, they finished the season with Ireland at home.
Wow.
Talk about a potential title decider.
Huge.
If the rankings are tight going into that final match,
Oh, yeah.
it could be a winner-takes-all scenario.
Wow. Just thinking about that schedule gives me chills. This is going to be an epic year for Springbok rugby. And you know what? Just got me even more excited for the 2027 World Cup.
Me too. And you know what else is exciting?
What's that?
We've got some amazing content coming up here on Rugby Obsession that you won't want to miss.
I can't wait.
So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the latest analysis, interviews, and deep dives.
Absolutely. We are your one-stop shop for all things Springboks and World Cup rugby. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's talk a bit more about the importance of that top seeding.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
We've touched on it, but I think it's worth really digging into why it matters so much.
You're right. Let's break it down with this new 24-team format. And the round of 16, avoiding those top-ranked teams in the early knockout stages could be crucial.
I see where you're going with this.
Imagine if the Springboks slipped to, say, 4th in the rankings.
Okay, yeah.
That could mean facing a team like New Zealand or France in the round of 16.
Yikes, talk about a nightmare scenario.
Exactly. But if they can hold on to that #1 spot, they're likely to face a lower-ranked team in that first knockout round, giving them a better chance of progressing to the quarterfinals and beyond.
So it's not just about bragging rights. That top seeding could actually be the difference between a deep World Cup run and an early exit.
It really could.
And it all comes down to those crucial matches in 2025.
Yeah.
Every win, every bonus point is going to matter.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the schedule, the importance of seeding. But now I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the Springboks' chances of actually pulling this off?
Mm-hmm.
Can they maintain that #1 ranking and secure a favorable World Cup draw?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think it's going to be a close one.
Yeah.
They have the talent, the experience, and the coaching staff to do it.
For sure.
But they're also facing some of the toughest competition in the world.
They are. And let's not forget about the added wrinkle of player rotation.
Right.
It's a bold strategy, and it could pay off big time in the long run, but it also adds an element of uncertainty to their performance in the short term.
Exactly. So what do you think?
I don't know.
Can they do it?
It's a tough one.
Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your predictions and analysis.
And while you're at it, tell us which match you're most looking forward to on that 2025 schedule.
Personally.
I can't wait to see those back-to-back clashes with the All Blacks.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be epic.
Those are always must-watch matches. But, you know, the way the rankings are shaping up, I think that final match against Ireland could be even more significant.
Oh, really?
Imagine the atmosphere if that game decides the #1 spot.
Now you're getting me really fired up, but I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've explored the Springboks world, ranking the challenges they face in 2025 and the implications of that ranking for the 2027 World Cup. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one final thought. So we've talked a lot about rankings and seeding, but it's got me thinking, how much does seeding actually matter when it comes to lifting that Webb Ellis Cup?
That's a great question. And, there's no easy answer. History shows us that being the top seed, it doesn't guarantee World Cup glory. I mean, we've seen underdogs overcome the odds and really surprise everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at South Africa's win in 2019.
Exactly.
They weren't the top seed going into that tournament, but they peaked at the right time and played some incredible rugby.
For sure. Ultimately, it comes down to performance on the field. Seeding, it can give you a slightly easier path in the early stages, but once you get to those knockout rounds, anything can happen.
So you're saying it's more about momentum peaking at the right time and maybe a little bit of luck?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The mental aspect of the game is huge in a tournament like the World Cup. Confidence, belief, resilience. Those are just as important as skill and physicality.
Absolutely. That's what makes the World Cup so captivating.
It is.
It's not always the best team on paper that wins. It's the team that can handle the pressure, adapt to the challenges, and rise to the occasion when it matters most.
And that's what we're going to be watching closely over the next couple of years. How do the Springboks handle the pressure of staying at #1? How do those newer players develop, and can they build that kind of momentum and team spirit that will carry them through a grueling World Cup campaign?
Those are the questions that keep us up at night here at Rugby Obsession, and we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on the Springboks' chances in 2027? Do you think seeding is crucial for World Cup success? Or is it all about peaking at the right time? Head over to the comments and share your insights. We'd love hearing your perspectives and getting into those passionate rugby debates. It's what makes this community so special.
Absolutely. And if you want to keep the conversation going, make sure you're subscribed to Rugby Obsession. We've got you covered with all the latest news analysis and deep dives on everything Springboks and World Cup rugby. We are your one-stop shop for all things rugby.
That's a wrap for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with more insightful rugby content. Until then, keep that rugby passion burning.